The 20th century saw a series of frightful wars alongside an explosion of material progress. It was an all-out battle between the forces of heaven, led by Our Lady of Fatima, and the forces of hell, led by atheistic communism. In mid-century, the Catholic Church, after the Second Vatican Council, lost her self-confidence and tried to befriend the world, her greatest enemy. In 1914, the First World War, then called the Great War, broke out. Pope St. Pius X died of a broken heart after the war broke out. During the First World War occurred the Armenian genocide. The Armenians had lived in this part of the world for at least 3,000 years, modern Turkey and neighbouring countries. They were one of the first nations to convert to the Catholic faith, although they followed the Greeks into schism from Rome. Most of their territory had been occupied by the Muslim Ottoman Turks in the 14th century, and the Armenians, although of a much higher cultural level, had been for 500 years a conquered Christian people subject to severe but sporadic. Most of their territory had been occupied by the Muslim Ottoman Turks in the 14th century, and the Armenians, although of a much higher cultural level, had been for 500 years a conquered Christian people, subject to severe but sporadic persecution. During the First World War, the Turks, allies of Germany, decided to exterminate the entire Armenian nation within their territory. At least 1.2 million Armenian men, women and children were slaughtered. There is now a much smaller state of Armenia to the east of modern Turkey, and refugees scattered around the world. The First World War, 1914 to 1919, caused slaughter and destruction on a scale never before imagined. On Easter week 1916, the Irish Rebellion began, and the Irish Republic was proclaimed from the steps of the General Post Office in Dublin. Pope Benedict XV prayed fervently for aid from heaven, adding the invocation Queen of Peace to the Litany of Our Lady and asking all Catholics to pray, and his prayer was answered. 8 days later, on the 13th of May 1916, Our Lady of Fatima appeared to 3 children, Lucia, Jacinta and Francesco. In the first of 6 monthly apparitions, she showed them a vision of hell, foretold the future, and urged prayer and penance to make reparation for the many sins of men. If my requests for amendment of lives, prayer and acts of reparation are not heeded, Russia will spread their errors throughout the world, provoking wars and persecutions. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. She said a further part, known as the third secret, which has never been revealed. In the end, the Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted. My Immaculate Heart will triumph, and God will grant a period of peace to the world. On the 13th of October 1916 was the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Predicted months in advance by Our Lady, at the precise time she had said there would be a miracle so that all might believe, the sun was seen to dance in the sky, whirl around and throw off marvellous colours for a full 15 minutes, and then suddenly dive towards the earth before returning to its place. This was seen by at least 70,000 people, including hardened atheists who had come to scoff. The 3 children did not see the sun dance, but they saw St. Joseph, Our Lady as Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and the Christ child blessing the world. And in the very same month, the October Revolution in Russia began, with the storming of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The Russian royal family were murdered, and the godless Bolshevik communist government began its existence. Its political theory was based on Marxism. Karl Marx had written in the 19th century, "Till I go mad and my heart is utterly changed, see this sword, the Prince of Darkness gave it to me." By lies and false promises, communism intended to take over the world and totally destroy the faith. One of its leaders declared, "The only country we will never take is Ireland. Her faith is too strong." A group of Irishmen started up a branch of the Communist Party in Ireland, but as they began each meeting with the Decade of the Rosary, Lenin was probably not very pleased with them. In 1922, Britain and Ireland signed the Irish Treaty, establishing 23 countries of Ireland as the Irish Free State. The 6 counties of Ulster remained under British control. The Second World War was waged from 1939 to 1945, as predicted by Our Lady of Fatima. The Second Vatican Council of the Catholic Church was held from 1962 to 1965. During this council, the movement in the Church, which Pope St. Pius X had castigated as modernist, was able to gain control of the direction of the Church. The effects of this council are still being debated to this day. In the late 1980s, many countries ruled by communists suddenly found their governments losing control and resigning. This was all happening far more peacefully than anyone had dared hope. For example, Czechoslovakia saw the Velvet Revolution, in which not a single person was killed. One reason for this was that the communist system gave too little incentive for ordinary people to work, with the result that it became impossible to maintain even basic material standards of living. Thus the promises of Marxism were seen to have failed, whereas it became impossible to hide the fact that the so-called capitalist countries were advancing in prosperity. On Christmas Day 1991, the government of the Communist Soviet Union signed itself out of existence, breaking up into 13 independent countries. The city of Leningrad returned to its ancient name of St. Petersburg. The Soviet Union broke up into the Commonwealth of Independent States and began to adopt a more Western style of government and economics. However, these countries were still economically dependent on Russia, and very soon were veering back towards the centralized and undemocratic ways of the former Soviet Union.